Hey everybody. So you got to do some writing, and I've asked you to provide sources and use quotations in your writing. How do you do it? How do you integrate a quotation or many quotations into your writing? Well, this video is going to give you 7 steps to integrating quotations into your writing. So there's 7 main components to integrating quotations into a paragraph. Now that goes for integrating quotations into an essay, into a blog, into an open letter, really anything that it is that you're writing, you really need to contextualize. Contextualization is the most important thing when you're integrating a quote into a piece of writing, right? Because you don't want to feel like you're driving along and hit a road bump, because that can be really jarring. And it's the same thing goes when you're reading, right? You don't want to read along and then just hit a quotation, because that can be really, really jarring. So there's a couple things to remember when integrating quotations. Number one, everything goes back to the main argument, right? That means the topic sentence goes back to the main argument. It means the quotation goes back to the main argument to support it. It means the last few sentences of the paragraph go back to the main argument to support that. Everything goes back to the main argument. And you might call this a thesis, you might call it a controlling argument, whatever you choose to call it. It is the main argument of the piece. Now, the 7 main components of the quotation sandwich are the main argument, the topic sentence, the bread, which is the introduction and the contextualization, the meat, which is the quotation itself, the cheese, which is the analysis of that quotation, and then finally the other piece of bread, which is links, as I said before, links to the thesis statement and then also links to the next paragraph. So the way this works, really, I mean, it's you can make your sandwich as complicated as you like, frankly. But the bulk of it comes down to this. You need to introduce the quotation, right? You have it, you've compiled your research, you've found a quotation that you want to use, but you need to introduce it, right? So here's your quotation. And the way you introduce it is you introduce the author, you say the author's name, you say the article, book, film, or TED Talk, or whatever it happens to be that the quotation comes from. And then importantly, right, and this is really abundantly important, is that you need to contextualize that quotation. And sometimes contextualizing that quotation means paraphrasing the argument that the author is making in the book or article, and also maybe providing a little bit of real-world context for it. Now here I've done both. Then you have the meat of the quotation. And simply all that is the quotation, followed by, in this case, an MLA citation for it. Now you'll notice I didn't put the author's name in the citation because I already used it previously. Now, following that, you have the cheese, and that's the analysis of the quotation. Now, oftentimes when you're analyzing, that's one of the more difficult things. One of the things you might do for your analysis is put the quotation or the meaning of the quotation into your own words, like I have done here. And then also you might want to go a little bit further and make your sandwich a little bit tastier and talk about some of the larger significances of of that author's argument. And then finally, for the quotation sandwich, you have the bread. Now, this is really just the bottom piece of bread. Otherwise, you have an open-faced sandwich, and it can be really kind of difficult to eat. You got meat and cheese and stuff sliding all over the place. You need to put that other piece of bread on just to solidify the sandwich. And that does 2 things. As I said before, it links back to the main argument, but also it links to the next paragraph, right? Because it's allowing for the flow of ideas to in your blog, in your essay, in whatever it is that you're writing. And in fact, that's one of the best ways to have the flow of ideas in any piece of writing is to always link everything, really legitimately every word, back to the main argument. Now that you've seen all the pieces of it, let's put it together and see how it sounds. This is a blog that I'm working on, and it's really in the very fledgling stages. I will very likely revise this many times over, but let's give it a read and see what it sounds like. I'm going to start here with the question. How will we respond to this? How we respond to this virus will decide our fate. Since it is nature and biology we are fighting, we might look to our own biology and nature for the answer. But who we are as a species is rarely agreed upon by scientists, cultural theorists, and even religions. Are we selfish and greedy by nature? Is this a dog-eat-dog world where everyone should get theirs at the behest of others? Or are we a species that works together, is altruistic and empathetic? Our immediate and long-term responses to this virus might tip the scales either towards selfishness or empathy. My money is on empathy. There are many folks who have put their money on a different horse. One is called selfishness. One of those men is Richard Dawkins. As he argues in The Selfish Gene, our genes are selfish, and that they selfishly want to reproduce at whatever cost. This is the nature of evolution. Right now, we could say that COVID-19 is also trying and succeeding to reproduce. As he says, be warned that if you wish, as I do, to build a society in which individuals cooperate generously and unselfishly toward a common good, you can expect little help from biological nature. Here Dawkins is arguing that it is perhaps in our genes to be selfish. While it is important to make a distinction between genes and behavior as Dawkins does, his argument here is that humans can be selfish in nature. But the interpretation of Dawkins' argument is perhaps misleading. Genes might be selfish, but that does not mean behavior is. The evolutionary truth is that as a species, our behavior is hardwired towards cooperation and empathy. Cooperation is key to all species' success. In fact, one of the reasons this virus, and all viruses for that matter, is so successful at reproducing is that its cells are very good at cooperating with each other. So, now that you've learned about how to integrate a quotation into a blog or anything it is that you're writing, you can go forward and conquer. If you have any questions, there's a handout. In Canvas, and I'll show you where to find it. If you go to your Canvas dashboard and click on the course that you're in, you can easily click on Modules and then scroll down to Useful Handouts. Keep scrolling and you'll find Quotation Sandwich Handout. Click on it. Here you will see the Quotation Sandwich Handout with explanations about how to do it if you're confused. You can download this and save it to your computer, or you can view it simply from Canvas. Also, if you have any other questions, hit me up on Slack via email or check out the live stream during office hours. Thanks everybody. See you online.